Well, I know I'm in heaven because if this was hell, God would have put me in a Yankees uniform. The guy in the hospital bed next to me told me I was on deck. He wasn't kidding. See, we got a nice crowd on hand, nearly a full stadium. Now, I'm not a particularly religious fella, but I'll tell you something. Not even the Almighty could throw a fastball past me. For if ever there was a man born to hit, it's Ted Williams.
He certainly would like to hit one out of here today. And there's a drive. Deep right center. Maybe on. Home run, Ted Williams.
I wasn't trying to hit number 521 that afternoon. It just happened. Hurt to run, it hurt to throw, but I still had that amazing feeling when I hit the ball. Nothing changed, not a thing. And as I trotted around the bases for that last time, I felt young again. I felt like that rookie kid they called the California Cookie. 21 years after I hit my first home run, I look back on that moment, and you know what I think? What did it all mean? Why was I, Ted Williams, meant to do all those things? For 19 seasons, I stepped into the batter's box at Fenway Park and stared down whoever it was throwing the ball that day. I didn't care. It didn't matter to me who it was. That's where it all ended. That Wednesday afternoon, September 28, 1960, in Boston, Massachusetts. I was 42 years old. As I look up the more than 10,000 cheering fans, I thought about it. I thought that I might be able to acknowledge them, to show them the gratitude that I had for everything I had experienced over the years. But I couldn't. I wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready. And so that's where it ended. Or did it? You see, something happened to me that I didn't expect. Every night since retirement, I had this recurring dream, a dream that put me someplace familiar. Didn't know where I was, but I knew where I ended up. A batter's box. I pick up that 35-ounce, 34-inch piece of lumber as I dig in 12 inches from the plate. I keep a loose grip on the barrel of the bat. I dig into the grooves that I cut into the handle with a bottle cap. The crowd is cheering. The sports writers have their fingers dangling above the keys of their typewriters. Will I be the GOAT or the hero today? And I think to myself as I do in every at-bat, let me just do this one thing. Hit the ball. Here comes the pitch. My hips swing out, my hands roll over the bat. Crack! The ball flies into the air. Back, back, back. The right fielder sprints to the warning track. He's at the wall. His glove reaches up, and it's caught by one of the fellas in the bullpen. Home run! But in my dream, I can't move. I can't run the bases. I just watch. But here's the thing. I turn to face the field, and another ball's coming straight in. Instinctively, I pull back the bat and drive that ball to right field. I watch it zip into the bleachers even further than the first one. A small smile creeps onto my face. But there's no time. Another ball's coming in. I drive that ball to right field. And another, and another, and another. An endless stream of fastballs. Gone. Pull it. Pull it hard. Pull it up and over. And I'm free. It's the best, most wonderful feeling in the world. Pull up the past. The burnt corners of old photographs and forgotten memories, and I find where it all began. Beneath the sunshine and the concrete and today's booming population lies the sleepy little town of San Diego. San Diego of the past, I mean. A little area town known as North Park. 4121 Utah Street. I lived there with my mother, my father, and my brother Danny. I was born in 1918 to Michaela Venzer, a Mexican Baptist, and Samuel Williams. My parents met in Hawaii while my mother was training to become a Salvation Army officer. My father was an enlisted man, just returned from the Philippines. They named me after Teddy Roosevelt, the famous president who carried a big stick, just like me. We lived in a tiny house. Our mortgage was $100 a month. My mother, she didn't have a domestic bone in her body. My breakfast usually consisted of curdled milk and burnt toast. Hey, don't get me started on dinner. Mom dreamt of working amongst the crowds, right? The chaos, the clattering lights of the big city. And she fulfilled every dream she ever had of working on Broadway. Oh, no. Not that Broadway. Broadway and C Street in downtown San Diego. That's where the Salvation Army office was, and that's where my mother left her heart. You know, she taught me about giving and helping those who were not as fortunate. I was always able to give something to myself. You know, an autographed ball to some kid in the hospital, or a charitable donation to some needy cause. I was never able to give myself, you know, the part of Ted Williams that existed in here. I don't know why. God knows I tried. I did, but sometimes your failures are your greatest accomplishments. You know? I'm sure that's why my father worked so hard. We barely saw him. As a result, my brother and I had that unsupervised freedom so many kids dream about, right? The freedom to explore, play, and get into trouble. Occasionally, my mother would take us on the train up to Santa Barbara, and we'd go visit my Uncle Saul. He and I would stand on the front porch for hours, just throwing the ball back and forth. Something me and my father never did. A former semi-pro baseball player, Uncle Saul taught me how to pitch. Hey, come on, throw it in there, Teddy. Attaboy, attaboy. Hey, put some mustard on the old girl. I'd fire him a strike. For an 8-year-old, I had a pretty good fastball. By the time I was 12, the country was in the midst of the Great Depression, and many people's dreams were dying. But I wanted to make sure that my dream of playing baseball became a reality. So I practiced every damn day. I practiced until the sun went down and you couldn't see the ball no more. See, a lot of folks say that the secret of good hitting is natural ability. But a lot of guys have natural ability. But no one ever talks about the practice. Practice, practice, practice. Damn it, you gotta practice. Back when I went to Garfield Elementary, the bases were rocks. The bats were giant sticks. Old Rodney Luscombe, the playground director, tried to chase us off, but after our 3rd or 4th time of breaking and entering, usually just stopped. So I was never too good at English class. But there was one subject I was an expert in, the science of hitting. And when I wasn't hitting a baseball, I was hanging out with this friend of mine, Les Cassie. One day, his dad drove us up in his 33 Chevy, and we trekked around to Coronado, just fishing the shore for hours, you know. I'd never been fishing before. The serenity of it all, the waves crashing, the seagulls chirping, the peaceful, quiet, idle conversation. Man, I was hooked. I mean, fishing became like my second sport. We must have caught every kind of fish you could find in the Pacific Ocean, those slow, sleepy mornings. You know, caught swordfish and albacore. Caught bass, big as a car. You know? I think Les Jr. was bored to death, because he didn't join us for any more fishing trips after that. So Les Sr. and I would go fishing out in Coronado on Saturdays, and occasionally we'd make bamboo poles and fish out in Mission Bay. Les Sr. became like a surrogate father to me. Les Jr. didn't mind. You know, we all palled around. Oh, there's another buddy of mine, too. This guy was a prince. One of the best guys you could ever know. Bob Breitbart. Bob and me met in typing class. He must have been about a foot shorter than me, you know. Played football, not baseball, but he had an eye, you know. Had that athletic prowess. On the diamond, he was my scout, my eyes. He'd tell me if I was swinging too early or if my stance was too wide. Oh, we get in all types of trouble too, you know, like shock some of our friends with our outrageous stunts, climbing the North Park water tower, or stealing tomatoes from the local farmyard. But the most outrageous thing happened in typing class when Bob and I were awarded first place for typing 32 words per minute without any errors. See, even then, I knew I had quick hands. Bob and me remained friends all my life. He was my conscience. One time, we decided to skip out on school after lunch. You know, Bob didn't want to do it, but I coaxed him into playing catch with me. So we're up against the girls' locker room, you know, and Bob sails a ball way high over my head. It lands in the upstairs window with a crash. We both get into trouble, but I take the blame. I mean, it wasn't his fault. I told Teach. Oh, that was our principal, Floyd Johnson, but I just called him Teach. See, as Floyd and me, we were pals. You know, I was always in his office for one thing or another. And, you know, I just put my feet up on his desk, and we talked about fishing and baseball, and yeah, detention. Anyhow, I told him it was my fault, that I threw the ball just to try and get the girls to run out naked. Hey, he laughed and suspended me for a day. I didn't mind. It was more time than I could practice playing ball. See, I think I had it better than most. You know, the Great Depression definitely affected my family, but both my parents had jobs. You know, there was always food to eat and roof over my head. There was nothing to complain about. And then something happened. Something that would change my life forever. This guy, Bill Lane from the Pacific Coast League Padres, paid me a visit. If you want to earn a few bucks, why don't you come down and play for my team? We're a professional baseball team right here in San Diego. So, my junior year, while my friends were playing high school ball, I was batting for the Pacific Coast League Padres. Hot damn! I made 150 bucks a month. Not bad for a 17-year-old. The team was an odd mix, an interesting breeding ground, kids just starting out and old major leaguers at the end of their careers. Oh, that's me on the lower right. Lane Field. Lane Field was squeezed in between the Santa Fe train station on one side and the shipping docks on the other. In between the bellows of the train conductor and the smell of the tuna fleet coming down the Pacific Coast Highway, the whole thing just put me at ease. Imagine, I mean, I was playing baseball for a living. What a thrill. Bob, Les Jr. and Sr., my brother, and even my father showed up to watch me play. My mom was there too, but she chose to wear the Salvation Army uniform and ring the bell outside the stadium. Yeah, I think she thought it was silly, you know, baseball. She always said it was just a game, and that when I was done playing my game, I should look for a real job. I tried to tell her this was my job. Don't get me wrong, all right? She was a great woman, just sort of removed. She had a hard time giving a hug. Anyhow, I kept playing baseball, and boy, did I hit. You know, the fans knew it, I knew it, and so did the Boston Red Sox. After my second season with the Padres, the Red Sox bought out my contract. I was invited to spring training in 1938 in Florida. After some hemming and hawing with my mom, I arrived a week late. There was massive flooding in the Southwest, and my train was delayed. Anyhow, I finally get to Sarasota, and I just like bound onto the field, you know, before I could even settle in. Manager Joe Cronin was a bit annoyed. When I walked by him for the first time, he just shook his head and glared at me. Before I could say anything back, Johnny Orlando, the equipment manager, says to me, "Hey, where you been, kid? Spring training started a week ago." That nickname stuck with me the rest of my life. After a while, me and Joe got along fine, you know. He called me Meathead. I called him Sport. I met all the guys, too. Guys like Ben Chapman and Lefty Grove. This one time, we're standing around taking BP, right? And Bobby Doerr says to me, "Wait till you see Jimmy Fox hit." "What are you talking about?" I said. "Well, wait till he sees me hit." And so it went. I was still raw and young, though, so at the end of spring training, they sent me down to AA ball to play with the Minneapolis Millers. Yeah, the Twin Cities were interesting. My first day there, I met the great Rogers Hornsby. He had retired at the end of the 1937 season and was now a coach with the Millers. Growing up, Rogers was one of those guys I was always trying to emulate. And man, now, here I was talking with him. And we talked for hours. I picked his brain, and he taught me how to control the battle between the pitcher and the hitter. Force the pitcher to throw the best pitch in the worst situation. Don't chase pitches out of the strike zone. Work the count to your favor. Force the pitcher to throw the perfect pitch. I had quick hands and quick reflexes and found that hitting the fastball came easy. Hitting the off-speed stuff, it's a bit more of a challenge. Hornsby tied it all together. Study the pitcher, kid, not the pitches. How he moves, who he talks to, what kind of food he eats. Does his curveball drop off the table? Does his fastball run high and inside? When he's behind in the count, what does he throw? Study, study, study. Now, for a high school kid whose best academic subject was typing, this was an education worth investing. So was Doris. Doris Soule was visiting her grandparents in Minneapolis when I first laid eyes on her at the Callis Cafe. She was the prettiest thing I'd ever seen. She looked like one of those goddesses in those old Greek movies, you know? And for the first time in my life, I was actually at a loss for words. As we got to know each other, I found out that she fished, hunted, and stood up to me in an argument. The perfect woman. After my first full season with the Millers, we went home to San Diego, and I introduced her to my parents. Mom thought she was cute. Dad just smiled, and my parents were actually happy to have me around the house again. That winter, I stayed in San Diego. But I didn't stay long. No, I never stayed long. I had a great spring training in 1939 and started the season with the big club. We rode the train to New York City for the season opener. Ah, boy, that was a day I'll never forget. I was 20 years old, still wet behind the ears. Nevertheless, here it was. April 18th, 1939, opening day. The New York Yankees versus the Boston Red Sox. Baseball's greatest rivalry, and here I was in the lineup. The Red Sox were still trying to bury the curse that Ruth built, while the Yankees were building a legacy. What was that churning in my stomach? I'd never been nervous before. I felt a little sick, so I slugged down a milkshake to calm myself. See, I never drank, right? Alcohol is bad for the eyes, and I needed my eyes to be clear as crystal for when I was going to smash that ball out of the park. I didn't care nothing about the field. All I wanted to do was slide in between the white chalk lines of the batter's box and swing from my heels at the cosmos. Too bad Mother Nature had other plans. The rain began to fall. I swear, it seemed like it rained for 100 years. When them tears of heaven stopped falling, I knew this was my time. I'd never been to a major league stadium before. See, there were no teams in the West during the 1930s. My virginal trip through the long, snaking corridors of Yankee Stadium were awe-inspiring. I was so nervous. I was shaking like the lead singer in a rumba band, you know, as I gingerly placed foot in front of foot. We walked as a team through the catacombs. All the Red Sox players were mumbling and chatting. You know, they pulled out ahead of me. I hung back, silent. With one hand shielding the sun, I moved slowly, majestically towards the end of the long tunnel. The light became more and more intense as I stepped into the glowing sunshine and out onto the field. My sleepy eyes and slack jaw just stared at the sight of it. What an entrance. It was beautiful. I mean, the manicured field, the whole stadium just drenched in white, like it was an angel or something. From my peripheral vision, I could see Joe Cronin walking slowly towards me with a smile on his face. He must have seen that rookie reaction 100 times before. I turned to look at him, but all he did was smile. And then he turned out too. And there we were, the two of us just staring off like kids. Joe didn't say nothing. Didn't want to ruin the moment for me. He was good like that. Hours later, as the men in hats filtered in and the smell of roasted peanuts permeated through the air, the Yankees took the field. They all were there, right? Joe DiMaggio in center field, Red Ruffin on the mound, and at first base, Lou Gehrig, the Iron Horse. Jogged out to first base, and there was thunderous applause. But right before he reached the first base bag, you know, he stumbled to one knee, nearly fell to the ground. You could hear the entire stadium hold its collective breath as the man, you know, picked himself up and awkwardly trotted to his position. We didn't know it then, but the Iron Horse was running his last race. Joe batted me third in the lineup that opening day, which meant I got up in the first inning. Before I knew it, Ruffin got 2 strikes on him. Heck, if he was going to get a third. Ruffin got the sign from his catcher, went onto the rubber, went into that funky wind-up of his and tossed the ball across the plate. I swung for my heels as my arms wrapped across my body. My head nearly popped off. Strike 3. In the 4th inning, on my second at-bat, Ruffy fooled me again and got the same result. Now, I love seeing a pitcher more than once because I started to get a feel for him, you know, how he throws, what he has to throw, what he likes to throw. So my next at-bat, I actually felt comfortable even though Ruffy struck me out the 2 prior times up. Dug my cleats into the earth. I adjusted my cap, stood ready and relaxed, pulled the bat back and glared. The ball looked as big as the moon. I steadied my eye, kept my eye on the ball, and took a nice quick swing of the lumber, and BAM! I launched a drive to deep right center field, splitting the outfield duo of Charlie Keller and Joe DiMaggio. As I rounded first base, I could feel my heart racing. I headed for second. I saw Joe D rear back from center field. I wanted to get dirty. I slid into second. Half second later, Joe Gordon swipes his glove across my body. I look up at the umpire, and he's got his arms spread like a giant eagle. Safe! Ah! My first major league hit! A double! Ah! I could see Joe Cronin pointing at me and smiling. All the Red Sox players were clapping and cheering me on. I swear, even Lou Gehrig gave me a little wink as if to say, "You made it, kid." Could have lived forever in that magical year in 1939. Sports writers were great. The fans were great. You know, whenever they cheered after a monster home run or a diving catch, I'd acknowledge them with just the tip of the cap. By season's end, I'd hit .327 and smacked 31 home runs, finishing 4th in the MVP voting. The team finished second behind the Yankees, who won 106 games in the pennant that year. But I had my first glimpse of Major League Baseball. Back home was another story. My parents fought, right? A lot. That was a big reason why I stayed out of the house so much as a kid. You know, even after the sun went down, I'd wander Balboa Park so I wouldn't have to hear the yelling and the screaming. But with an empty stomach and chill, I'd hoof it back to Utah Street. But by now my parents had had enough of the insults and the name calling, and that's when my dad left home and moved to Sacramento. It's odd, you know. It wasn't as if I missed him. He was never around anyhow. He never hit us. He never yelled at us. He just ignored us. I never took any of it personally. You know, I always had an outlet, somewhere to channel all that energy when I was a kid. I returned to the East Coast and had a great spring training in 1940. But as the season got underway, something strange happened. Something I wasn't accustomed to. Jeers. For every home run, there was still the roar of the crowd. But now, after every strikeout, there were boos and taunts. I didn't understand. I was a rookie sensation. The fans loved me. What happened? Well, what I didn't understand was now I was elevated to this super stardom place, right? The fans expect more from you. After I hit so well at Fenway, they moved the bullpen out to right field. This shortened the distance to home plate by 23 feet. The sports writers thought it was a stunt so that I could hit more home runs. Williamsburg, they called it. So if I smacked the drive to right field, it was expected now more than ever for that ball to land on the porch. As a young, impatient man, this did not sit well with me. Ted Williams played the way Ted Williams played. A month into the season, I'm hitting over 300 and getting booed every time I hit into a double play. They wanted perfection. They wanted Superman. You see, I was an organism, and every fan had a microscope. There was so much competition from the sports writers to sell papers, to sell conflict. This one sports writer from the Boston Record, a fellow by the name of Dave Egan, the Colonel, strolled up to me in the locker room after a game, and I told him how I felt. Those unruly SOBs, they're a damn mob. All of them are against me. I'm working my butt off, and that bunch of scum can't even see it. Most of all, I don't like you human crows who write typographical sneers. Why don't you get the hell out of here, you heel? All of you! I quickly realized I made a mistake. The article went to print, and the sports writers and the fans hated me even more. To be honest, I can't say I blame them, right? Over the years, the sports writers called me many names, right? The Splendid Splinter, the Kid. And in return, I called them too many names to repeat or print for that matter. But Egan never forgot that first encounter. And he hounded me the rest of my career. On the last day of that 1940 season, I had a particularly bad day at the plate. Egan was hovering around my locker, not saying nothing, just reveling in my failure. All the reporters were asking questions, but all I could focus on was Egan. The more he didn't talk, the madder I got. Finally, in the middle of some reporter's question, I let loose. All you clowns with a keyboard, go take a jump in the lake! With fists up, I was ready to take on the entire Boston media, when out walks Joe Cronin with a fishing pole, no less. Williams, shut your bass! This gave the sports writers something to chuckle about, and they moved on. Ah, Joe. Always knew how to reel me in, both on and off the field. Over the years, as my aggression toward the sports writers and the fans reached epic proportions, people would always ask why I didn't go to another team. Right? If the fans and the media and everything else got to me, why didn't I escape to a better environment? Because, I would tell them, I love baseball. And there's no better place on this earth to play baseball than in Boston. The fans love you, right? I gave them someone to love, someone to hate. And in return, people said I needed to get in touch with my feelings, my emotions. All right, well, see, that's why I stayed in Boston. The flurry of emotions. Guess I thrived on it. 1941. Hitler rolling through Europe, and here I am having the best year of my career. Season started out like any other, but by mid-August, me and Joe DiMaggio were locked in a battle of the media. The knights to the keyboard followed our every move. Williams or DiMaggio? Williams or DiMaggio? How high would my average go? How long would Joe's hitting streak last? For sports fans, this felt more like a tennis match than baseball, as all eyes bounced back and forth between the center fielder from New York and the left fielder from Boston, seeing who would win baseball's golden prize. May 25th, I was at 4:30. At the end of June, Joltin' Joe had hit in 45 consecutive games, breaking Willie Keeler's major league record, and I just kept on hitting. By the All-Star break, I was hovering around 405. Me and Joe were on the squad that year. For one day, one game, we both were teammates. I remember looking up at the lineup from the dugout and seeing Joe DiMaggio third, Ted Williams fourth. I strolled the outfield before the game, shagging flies with the Italian kid, and we chatted for a bit. Neither one of us talked about baseball. We just talked, a couple of regular guys. Kind of like that. Bottom of the 9th inning. American League was down 5-4. I came up to bat, 2 on, 2 out. Step into the batter's box. Here comes the pitch. Fastball, high and inside. Bang! Goodbye, Mr. Baseball. That was one of the happiest moments of my major league career. Joe's hitting streak ended at 56 games. So as September drew to a close, all eyes were on me. Would I hit 400? We rolled into Philadelphia to play the lowly Athletics. Later in my career, I'd always tell young hitters that I'd rather face the best pitching in the league. See, part of my success came from the way I studied pitchers. I didn't like pitchers I didn't know. Then again, they didn't like me neither. Anyway, last day of the season was a doubleheader. A's owner-manager Connie Mack threw up a pair of rookie hurlers that day. 2 games left. I'm right at 400. A lot of people wanted me to sit out, take my numbers to the record books, call it a season. But I didn't come here to sit on the bench. I came here to play ball, and that's what I did. Went 4 for 5 in the first game, 2 for 3 in the second. Up my average to 406. My last at-bat, I hit a fastball so far and so hard, it smacked a loudspeaker atop the outfield fence. The thing just dropped to the field. They gave me a double. Had to pay for the loudspeaker, too. Yeah, quite a season to be in a Red Sox uniform. Little did I know soon I'd be in a completely different uniform.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
The United States went to war, and I went to the ballpark. In 1942, I won the Triple Crown. Hit .356 with 36 home runs and 137 RBIs. But my conscience nagged at me. A year earlier, I defiled from the draft to support my mother as my dad left me. But my country needed me now, and I knew it. I enlisted.
They put him in a forest green suit that just doesn't fit so, and they've succeeded in knotting a necktie around his gander. But the Navy can't fool us. He's still Ted Williams, the splendid splendor of Slungo. He's just one of 30 naval aviation cadets in the civilian pilot training course at Amherst College. He gets up at 6:45 every morning. He falls in, falls out, about faces, salutes. He eats the regular chow, sleeps the regular hour. He takes the bus to Northampton on a Saturday night, but he's still the kid.
Naval Aviation Cadet 705531111. People said I could have probably found something a little less dangerous, but I wanted to serve my country, and I wanted to fly. So they sent me to Pensacola, Florida, and for nearly 3 years, I didn't play a single major league game as I learned how to pilot an F-4. My squadron leaders found me to be an able-bodied pilot with a good attitude, and on May 2nd, 1944, I earned my 2nd lieutenant wings. Now, I have to say, Doris took this entire enlistment thing in stride. She was a vigilant woman and patient, too. We've been dating for close to 6 years now, and my baseball job took me all around the country, and now with the military, all around the world. And like a lot of GIs, I wanted a bit of security, so on May 4th, 1944, Doris and I tied the knot. Things were looking up, and I felt great. There was no arguing, no bickering. Our wedding day was perfect. And then with me being gone all the time, the arguing started up. All we seemed to do was yell at each other, over the phone, through letters. Look, I was far from the perfect husband, you know. Some men have trouble with booze, some with drugs and smoking and gambling. My Achilles heel was women. All those months on the road, all those games, all that time alone, I couldn't have asked for a better wife than Doris. She was strong, able, and put up with me. Anyway, it was a doubleheader sometime in Washington. I was beat. You know, I was exhausted. It was hot. It was humid. It felt like 1,000,000 degrees in that stadium. Boys and I grabbed a late night meal and then headed back to the hotel to call it a night. We strolled by the front desk and I grabbed my messages. 2 calls, both from Doris. 2 little notes, sweet as could be. Feeling high for a moment, I headed upstairs, back to my hotel room. Just then, another player walked by me in the opposite direction. I think you got a delivery, kid. Feeling a little puzzled, I went over to my front door and found someone waiting for me. This tall, brunette number. She must have been 5'10", slender, with long brown hair, silver earrings, no makeup. She was packed into her outfit like 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream. That night she showed me how big a fan she really was. It was a mistake. The girl later tried to extort money from me. She wanted publicity. She tried to reach out, but I never responded. And Doris never found out about that girl in D.C. But I knew. I always knew, and that stuck with me, right here, in the ribs. And there were others, right? Different girls, different cities. Doris never found out, but I know she knew. She must have. Pitchers couldn't figure me out. Managers had no idea how to keep me off the base paths. No one could figure me out except Doris. She was the one person who truly knew how to play me. '46 was a great year. Even with a nagging shoulder injury, I won the MVP. Even better was the fact that the former Pilgrims of Boston were now the talk of the baseball world as we won the American League pennant. And like those heroic souls who first set foot on Plymouth Rock, I was headed into uncharted territory. The World Series. We squared off against the St. Louis Cardinals. After a seesaw affair, we pushed the series to 7 games. In the 8th inning of that last game, the team rallied from a 3-1 deficit. Ahead of me in the lineup was Joe DiMaggio's younger brother, Dom. With 2 outs, he ripped a single to right field, knotting the game at 3. The weight of the season fell on my shoulders. It was up to me. All of Sportsman's Park was silent.
Now batting for the Red Sox, number 9, Ted Williams.
Thoughts were flying through my mind, The infield had shifted, so I figured if I could just smack a gapper in the left field, Dom could score easily. I was thinking fastball. He's going to throw a fastball, so I pulled the bat back. I tugged at it a little, gripped it just a little tighter than normal as the ball came in, and pop! The ball soared straight up into the sky and landed in second baseman Red Shandis' glove. I killed the rally. I walked back to the dugout and just slammed the bat down and broke it in two. There were 2 outs in the 9th inning. The score was still tied at 3. Enos Slaughter was on first.
Enos Slaughter is on first base with 2 away. Harry Walker at bat, Bob Klinger on the mound. He takes the stretch, here's the pitch. There goes Slaughter. The ball is swung on as a line drive going into left center field. It's in there for a base hit. Polzin fumbles the ball momentarily, and Slaughter charges around second, heads for third. Pesky goes into short left field to take the relay from Polzin. And here comes Enos Slaughter rounding third. He's going to drive for home. Here comes the throw, and it's not in time. Slaughter scores, and the St. Louis Cardinals are the champions of baseball.
I batted only .200 in the 1946 World Series. Some said it was the injury that kept me from hitting, but that's an excuse. I was a failure. Most of the guys could just brush it off as they went into the off-season to spend time with their families, you know, to work their other jobs. But I couldn't shake the thought of failure. Baseball was my family. I wanted another chance. I kept replaying that pitch over and over in my head. What could I have done differently? How could I have adjusted? I couldn't wait for 1947. Race. The only race I cared about was the pennant race. When I first broke into baseball, there wasn't any diversity. And many closed-minded individuals try to keep it that way. But every once in a while, a few would slip through the cracks. See, my mother was Hispanic. I guess I was one of the lucky ones. No one asked, and I never told. But if I had carried my mother's last name of Benzer, believe me, I don't think I ever would have made it into the majors. Back in San Diego, we didn't have segregation. Oh, okay, sure, yeah, it was there, perhaps in mindset, but nothing like when we went to D.C. to play the Senators or St. Louis to play the Browns. No. And as Jockey Robinson made history that day, as he took the field for the Dodgers, one must also think about the players who could have made a difference on so many other clubs. Guys like Josh Gibson and Chet Brewer and a young Satchel Paige. Why? And a country as profound and powerful and enlightened as the United States of America. You have to ask, why? Soon I got back to doing what I did best. Hit. In 1947, I hit .343 with 32 dingers to win my second Triple Crown. But as the 1948 season got underway, I found myself in a completely new role. Father. On January 6, 1948, Barbara Joyce Williams was born in the Richardson House of Boston, lying in hospital. She weighed 5 pounds, 6 ounces. We called her Bobby Joe. Mama and baby were doing fine, and the baby wasn't due for another month, so I was fishing in Florida. Sports writers, heck, half the media in the country slammed me for the fact that I didn't return to Boston for a full 5 days after the birth of my daughter. Well, what was I to do? Baby was healthy, Doris was fine, what could I have done? But the public scorned me for it. I say the heck with public opinion. It's my baby, my life. And you know what? The mob don't know me, the sports writers don't know me, the fans don't know me. Nobody knows me. Nobody. .1948. Season got underway. I started out strong. Ended up hitting .369. .49 next season, I won the MVP. But there was one thing that still eluded me. The World Series ring. And I didn't know it at the time, but I'd never have another chance at it again. I used to send money home to my mother and brother in San Diego. They built a porch on Utah Street. That's when I got the wire. My father had died. Stopped me cold. We barely talked those last few years. Man didn't even know me. Still, what kid don't want to impress his dad? Only he never came to Boston to see me play. Never. Not once. I offered to pay for the train, hotel, everything. I never really knew who my father was, so to me I suppose he was already dead. We were just two men who lived life on their own terms, and I was becoming him, ran away from those that needed me the most. When I got that telegram, I just stared at it. I didn't laugh, didn't cry, just stared. After World War II ended, I stayed on as a reserve, never actually thinking I'd be called up so soon. But there I was, back in the Marine Corps, flying planes. And after 2 years of combat training, they shipped me off to Korea. I was assigned to VMF 311 at base K3 near the South Korean stronghold of Pohang. John Glenn, the future astronaut, was there, as well as a few other ball players I knew. Standard operating procedure for new pilots was to take 2 flights along the bomb lines to familiarize themselves with their planes, as well as the topography before moving into actual enemy combat. Well, I took my 2 flights in my Panther jet and flew combat on the 3rd. Little did I know it'd nearly be my last. My squadron flew directly into the Communist Supply Center of Kyomipo on February 16, 1953, stealthily dropping bombs before pulling out unscathed. Or so I thought. Suddenly, my dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. My control stick shook. I radioed the squadron, "Mayday, Mayday," but all I got back was static. Radio was dead. Thought I might be too. Off to my right, I see these black tendrils of smoke slithering away in the distance like tiny tornadoes. And for the first time, I truly feared for my life. That's when I heard him. From beneath my plane, there came a roar. This 22-year-old hotshot pilot named Larry Hawkins came rushing to my aid. Hawkins flew up on my right side, and I followed him. I was leaking fuel. Hawkins led me out past enemy fire and over to the American Air Base K-13 near Suwon. Piloting the sluggish aircraft as best I could, I followed him all the way over to that airfield. Flames ignited near the rear of the plane. I brought that beast kissing to the ground, parts of her wings clipped off. I slammed the brake hard, but she skidded across the runway for another 9,000 feet. Finally, the plane settled. I jumped out of the cockpit, ran away from her as fast as I could. Emergency crews swarming all over with hoses and water. Out of the corner of my eye, I see this green military staff car pull up. Out jumps a colonel. I can't recall his name. I salute. He salutes back. In his hand, he's got some official-looking document. Hands it to me. I take it. It's blank. What's this? Aviator Ted Williams? Yes, sir. May I have your autograph? War ended in Korea, and so did my marriage. On January 19, 1954, Doris filed for divorce. To be honest, I can't say I blame her. I yelled a lot. Wasn't always there. Heck, I was either on the road, stuck up on a lake, or in the air. Doris got the house, the baby blue Cadillac, in custody of Bobby Joe. All things considered, I thought that was pretty fair. I never fought for custody. Bobby Joe belonged with her mother. Well, what was I to do? I was no good at PTA and dollhouses. Look, I like kids. Love them. But a girl needs her mama, and I was in no position to be a parent. People say I didn't like kids. Well, they're wrong. See, I love the look in a young person's eye when I go sit in the cancer ward or sit with a kid who had a bad turn. I relish the time I'd read storybooks to orphans or sit on the wooden benches in Foxborough and watch the kids play Little League. I love their energy, their determination. But at the end of the day, I could walk away. Guess that's how I loved him, from a distance. Spring training, 1954. I broke my collarbone. The bone fragment had snapped loose and had to be shoved back into place as doctors held my arm together with catgut and steel wire. A little procedure called the pin. I didn't get an official at-bat until May 15th. Went 0 for 2. The next day, in Detroit, I went 8 for 9 during a day-night doubleheader, with 5 singles, 2 home runs, and a double. Still, with every swing of the bat, I felt pain. I hurt all day, every day. My body was falling apart. Dave Egan was first to respond. Perhaps it would be an excellent idea if baseball's terrible-tempered Mr. Bang would retire now. That way the fans in Boston could really have something to cheer about. The games, the money, the stats, the late inning clutch hits, the diving catches off the foul lines. It's all make-believe. In the end, it means nothing. I couldn't run away from my demons of self-destruction, screaming at sports writers, spitting on fans, affairs with women. I was spent. Still, I hit .356. Yankees manager Casey Stengel joked he was going to put pins in all his players' shoulders next year. They named me Comeback Player of the Year. I felt 1,000 years old.
Happy holiday. Happy holiday.
I always hated the holidays. They were the loneliest time of the year for me. Doris and me were officially divorced, but she was kind enough to send me photos of Bobby Joe. She was beautiful. All itty-bitty, pretty and sweet. Missing a few teeth here and there, but those eyes, that mouth, kind of like mine. She could run like a reindeer, too. I wish I could run like her. Only 3 years old, and she could already throw a baseball. Most amazing thing in my life was my little girl. She barely knew who I was. I was missing it, all of it. I didn't even know it. Her first tooth, her first boyfriend, her growing up. I thought she had a little spark in her soul, wanted to believe she was just like me. But being a father and imagining you're a father are two totally different things. As I rounded the bag towards 40 years old, I was caught in a rundown. My daughter was more alive to me in those photographs than she was in real life. I should have seen her more often. I should have been with her more often. I should have done a lot of things, but I didn't. Dave Egan wrote this about me. It is often said that Williams could have been another Ruth, except for his vicious personality. But there is not the slightest truth to that canard, for Williams could have been only a substitute for the Babe, and a poor one at that. He lacks the ability that the Babe had, and lacks it in every department, including that of batting. I've gone 30 years without using the word, but now that the word has come into polite usage by the gutter tactics of our great man, I shall say that Babe Ruth could spit farther than Ted Williams can hit a ball, and that there is no basis for comparison between the two, even in the one department in which Williams has won shameful fame. Those words still hurt me. Family night against the Orioles, 1956. The game was knotted in two. I hit a home run to break the tie, and the Fenway faithful cheered. Oh, they gave me one of the greatest ovations I'd ever got. You know? Who knows? There'd probably been more just like it, only I was too in my head to care. Anyway, after 17 years that day in Boston, I realized that the fans, the good people of that city, were always on my side. I just finally noticed. 1957 was an amazing year. After a miserable spring training, who knows how many strikeouts, I finally figured out this new pitch, the slider. I'd also really begun to figure out the infield shift they put on me. You know, hit to the left side more and more. Up my average to 388. 8 hits shy of 400. Not bad for an old-timer. But by 1959, Father Time had finally caught up with me, and I remember it was a close game. You know, I was standing on second base. My body shot full of cortisone. My legs feeling stuck in quicksand, and I looked at home plate, and man, let me tell you, looked about a mile away. I was just hoping I'd have enough breath in me to get from home to get to. I was just hoping I could get to home if we got a hit. For the first time, thoughts of retiring occurred to me. But what would I do? Who would I be without baseball? How would I live? That season, I hit below 300. Only time in my entire career. Red Sox owner Tom Yawkey paid me a visit in the off-season. Hello, Teddy T. I gave him a drink, sidecar, and we sat down. How's the arm? Good, shaping up. How's the eyesight? Not bad. Like a prize boxer who will dance with you round after round. He finally delivered the knockout blow. He didn't have to say it, just gave me a look. Now, he was like that. You could read everything the man was saying in just his facial expressions. Through the silence, I could hear the scrub jays squawking. And then 406 and 41, 18 All-Star games, 2 MVPs, 2 Triple Crowns, and nearly 500 home runs. After he was done rattling off my resume, I pulled my head up. Tom looked me square in the eye and smiled. You know, he sat back, waited. I took a deep breath, looked him in the eye as he waited for my answer. Could I still get around on the fastball? I mean, could I adjust to the off-speed stuff? Finally, I reached out, you know, took a hold of his arm and asked him for one more. Just one more season. Tom looked away and then said, if a 41-year-old ball player asked me for one more season, I'd say he's out of his mind. If a 41-year-old Ted Williams asked me for one more year, I'd say you're still out of your mind. But you're Ted Williams. Here's where I should mention Danny. My brother Danny was a fighter, abrasive even. He didn't seem to get no breaks. I can remember him as a kid, you know, holding a bat, looking up to me, saying, "Teddy, how come I didn't get the gift?" My last season in the bigs, Danny passed away after a long battle with leukemia. I stood over his hospital bed and thought about my own family 3,000 miles away. Danny and me barely talked those last few years. But after he was diagnosed, I went to visit him in California. "Hey, Danny, how you feeling?" He was too weak to talk. He'd just nod, and I'd grab his fist, you know, and pretend to sock myself in the jaw. Sometimes when he felt strong enough, we'd talk about how reckless we were as kids, how we'd go out to Mission Valley and shoot rabbits and cow tip at night. But we weren't kids no more. You know, we were grown men, 2 grown men grown apart. Danny's death was especially hard on my mother. I was home for the funeral. Mom looked older than I'd ever seen her. I let too much time get away. And as I held her hand, I could see myself staring back at me, you know? It was like looking into a mirror. I could feel her ferocious fear, the fear of losing control of one's own destiny. A fear I never wanted to experience. Not in baseball, not in life. Back in Boston one day, you know, late in the season, I saw one of the best hitters I'd ever seen. One of them young kids, you know, kept his wrists loose and his body relaxed. He was a beanpole-looking kid, a lot like me at his age. Pitcher threw him a fat one right across the plate. Kid hit it 1,000 feet. That future Hall of Famer ran around the bases with class. What was I doing still playing this game, I wondered. This kid had a spring in his step, a glint in his eye, the same glint I used to have. I sat and watched him hit all day. Kid was a natural. All 4'5" of him. Only 9 years old, and I could tell he was already a player. Kids like him would ask me how I hit so well, and I'd tell them. Roll your wrists after you hit the ball, and you'll unlock that power, right? Keep a nice, firm stance. You got to be able to adjust to what the pitcher's tossing you. If he's throwing you the heat, then you got to be quick as lightning, right? If he's throwing you the off-speed stuff, well, then you got to sit on it. Hitting's all about speed. Call me Ted. September 28, 1960. I jogged out to left field at Fenway for the last time. The smells of burnt peanuts and pine tars, you know, the clang of the bats and the helmets. I squeezed the lumber, touched the corner of home plate, and dug in with a 12-inch stance. Same stance I used to have since 1939. Swung, strode, and hit the ball clear over the right field wall. Williamsburg got one last deposit. My final season, I hit a respectable .316, and I hung it up for good.
Will you hold the ball when you step to the plate? Will you swing at the ball? If you play, you gotta know how it's done. Can you catch? Can you hold a hard one? I mean, baby, do you know the game? I mean, baby.
I like retirement. Love the time to myself. I appeared on boxes of Wheaties. They even named a root beer after me. Sears Roebuck made me a national spokesman for their hunting and fishing department. I was having fun. In 1966, they voted me into Cooperstown. I admit, I was nervous. I had to make a speech. I shuffled over to the podium, got out my notes, and said, I guess every player thinks about going into the Hall of Fame, but I know it is the greatest thrill of my life. I received 280-odd votes from the writers. I know I didn't have 280-odd friends among the writers. I know they voted for me because they felt in their minds and in their hearts that I rated it. And I want to say to them, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Today, I am thinking about a lot of things. I am thinking about my playground director in San Diego, Rodney Luscombe, my high school coach, Was Caldwell, and my managers who had so much patience with me. Fellas like Frank Schellenbach, Donnie Bush, Joe Cronin, and Joe McCarthy. I'm thinking of Eddie Collins, who had so much faith in me. And to be in the hall with him particularly, as well as those other great players, is a great honor. I'm sorry Eddie isn't here today. I'm thinking of Tom Yawkey. I've always said it, Tom Yawkey is the greatest owner in baseball. I was lucky to have played on the club he owned, and I'm grateful to him for being here today. But I'd not be leveling if I left it at that. Ball players aren't born great. They're not born great hitters or pitchers or managers. And it ain't easy. No one has come up with a substitute for hard work. I've never met a great player who didn't work harder at learning to be great than anything else he ever did. To me, it was the greatest fun I ever had, which probably explains why today I feel both humility and pride, because God let me play the game I love and learn to be good at it. The other day, Willie Mays hit his 522nd home run. He has gone past me and he's pushing, and I say to him, "Go get him, Willie!" Baseball gives every American boy a chance to excel. Not just to be good as anybody else, but to be better. This is the nature of man and the name of the game. I hope someday Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson will be voted into the Hall of Fame as symbols of the great Negro players who are not here because they weren't given the chance. As time goes on, I'll be thinking baseball, teaching baseball, and arguing for baseball to keep it right on top of American sports. Just as it is in Japan, Mexico, Venezuela, and other Latin American and South American countries. So in closing, I am grateful and know how lucky I was to have born on American soil and had the chance to play the game I love. The greatest game. I looked out into the adoring crowd and spotted Mrs. Stephen Tomasco, or as I called her, Bobby Joe. She was 18 now and pregnant, living in Florida with Doris. She was having some emotional problems. She had attempted suicide several times now, and I saw her out in the crowd, and I turned to talk to someone and then looked back, and she was gone. Well, I'd called around to several treatment facilities for her. I mean, it was the least I could do. I also sent $600 to her and her new husband as they settled down in Philadelphia. I didn't know what she was doing for work. I didn't know if she finished school. I didn't even know what her favorite food was. My own daughter felt like a phantom to me. Why did I stay away? Why didn't I want to be a part of her life? What was I afraid of? Kids, you know, they break your heart. In 1961, I had married Lee Howard and quickly got divorced. Both my marriages were not without joy, I guess, but they had both been failures. In 1968, I married Dolores Weddick. She was a fashion model and an actress. Not soon after, she bore me a son, John Henry. Once again, as Dolores and John Henry lay in the hospital, I was nowhere to be found. You know, as hard as I could push my family away from me, I could never push baseball far from my mind. I was down in the count when it came to showing up for the birth of my children. I don't know if it was resentment, fear, or apathy, but I just needed to be away. Look, I suppose I lived life on my own terms. I hollered, Dolores listened. I cursed her. Dolores smiled. I cheated on her. Dolores just looked the other way. She was stronger than me. Guess that's why we stayed together. I always needed something to tear down. As I look back, I can see I hurt people. I was destroying my humanity from the inside out. All the fishing and joking around couldn't disguise the fact that there was a bug inside of me crawling around and needed to be fed. A big, black, heartless bug. Perhaps that's That's what kept me so focused on the ball field. You know, but when that dark part of me threatened to take over, it was Dolores who made me feel human again. You know? It was Dolores who took care of John Henry. It was Dolores who took care of the house, the finances. It was Dolores who took care of me. She would have made one hell of a manager. I always said you could never pay me enough to manage in the big leagues, but in '69 I needed a job. So when the new Senators owner Bob Short asked me to manage the Washington franchise, I said yes. What a lousy group. Huh? Washington, first in war, first in peace, and last in the American League. Now, I don't know if it was the result of expansion or those players actually listened to what I was yapping about when it came to hitting, but the washed-up Senators of Washington won a respectable 86 games in '69. Know what? Felt good. I never hated the fans. But in my opinion, the test of a true fan is one that sticks with his team no matter what. Even if your team loses, 6 months later it starts all over again and you invest in another season of uncertainty. But one thing remains the same. You love your team. So when I got out of baseball, that's what I became. A fan. A fan of magnificent players like Tony Gwynn and George Brett, Rod Carew. All players who flirted with 400. Records were made to be broken, right? Fan Appreciation Night, 1969. RFK Stadium was packed. The DC fans were anxious to see a Senators club that had won more games than any other team in franchise history. Flashbulbs popped. The crowd was on its feet. I smiled, and for the first time in nearly 30 years, I tipped my cap. All I ever wanted people to say was, "There goes Ted Williams, the greatest hitter who ever lived." Was I perfect? No. But I gave my best. Baseball is the only sport in the world where you can fail 7 out of 10 times and they put you in the hall. And I failed more often than I succeeded. But I did my best. You could print that.